Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try to do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, how is everybody doing? How is everybody's week going? I swear it feels like every single week there's more and more craziness going on in the world, and um, I think a lot of people are really struggling with anxiety and depression and overwhelm and um, all of that. Changing My Life is here. Speculator Blue Moon. Hello and welcome. Ran Lion says, I'm doing okay. That's good. It's amazing. Uh, it's just been such a series of events, hasn't it, since January? And it's amazing what that kind of living in this level of anxiety can become a new normal and how we kind of can get used to that. Jack is saying YouTube notifications are not working again. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with them. It's frustrating. Lori says, hi there. I'm going through it for sure. How are you guys doing with self-care? What's working for you as far as taking care of yourself during all of this? Is anybody doing anything different or taking up any new hobbies or going to bed a little early or maybe even a little bit later? Eating healthy. Okay, Ava was saying eating healthy has been working for her. That's a wonderful way to take care of yourself. That makes such a difference too with mindset. Oh, good for you too. Ava saying, I also started playing the piano again. That's wonderful. Yes. Missouri Cowboy saying time in the sun each day, the whole body. Yeah, that makes an ocean of difference. I've been trying to get at least 15, 20 minutes in every day, uh, just taking the dog for a walk and soaking in some vitamin D. Speculator is saying self-care is going great. I didn't spend a dime for nearly 2 years. Now I just bought a new bedroom set. Kind of scary though. Yeah, it can be, but good for you for getting a new bedroom set. And it sounds like that was something that you could afford. So it doesn't sound like an extravagance that's going to put you in the hole or anything. So that's good. Jack says, I'm leaning a lot on Huffle Mom, but trying to make sure she takes self-care too. That's good. Changing My Life says, what does self-care mean again? That's a joke. I started some inner child work, but it's hard to keep at it. My inner child is terrified. Yeah, I tell you, uh, it's interesting. Out of all of the terms that we use, I know you were joking, but out of all of the terms that we use on this channel or kind of within this community relating to narcissistic abuse in general, like gaslighting and projection and love bombing and triangulation and parentification and all of these terms, the one that trips people up the most is self-care. And that's the one, interestingly enough, people tend to ask the most about. What do you mean by that? What exactly is self-care? And I just think that's so telling, how many people truly struggle with that. So, yeah, it's interesting. I really wish there were classes taught at a young age about uh, what it means to truly take care of ourselves. And, we learn all kinds of other stuff in school. It seems like that should be a big part of it. Oh my goodness. Latanya says, I've been going through it. I work customer service, taking calls, and I've had a ton of racist attacks. I feel like I'm going to snap and lose my job. That is wild. Is it random? Is it just random people that are calling and it's just coincidence? That kind of stuff is so, if it is random, well, I guess even if it's not, but I guess it's scarier. It's more concerning to me if it is random, because then it just kind of means it's a bigger problem. Um, and it's that's brewing, I guess. Jack was saying chronic persistent pain is really bad the past 2 weeks. Do you think it's related to stress at all, Jack? Or is it a change in weather, or what's going on, do you think? Changing my life. You emailed me about this, and I read the email and I was going to respond, but I couldn't find it. So I'm glad that you connected. You just said this along with your name, so I can do a search in my email for changing my life. Changing my life says, on the brighter side, I am now putting my new online business out there. I create my joy coaching and design for survivors of abuse, helping them to create places of joy. I love that so much. Let me write this down. If I don't write it down, it's going to be out of my brain. Changing my life. Email. Okay. Terry says, any advice on when you get the urge to contact them? Oh, yes. My go-to in this is what I call the for when you miss him or her list that I encourage people to make. So it's writing down in bullet point format of all of the reasons this relationship was not for you and that you need to not go back. And then when you do have those kind of moments of weakness, I guess, you can pull out that list and be reminded of, oh, right. Because nostalgia plays tricks with the person's brain. So remembering, oh yeah, this is why, it helps snap you back into reality real quick. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Latanya said it was McDonald's customer service. Today, people were angry that McDonald's is supporting the protests, and I was heavily attacked by customers. That's outrageous and disturbing. I am so sorry that you had to go through that. It's like, I don't even know what to say to that. I don't know how anybody would have an issue with the protests. I could see having an issue with the rioting and um, the extreme parts of it. I don't think anybody's a huge fan of that, but the fact that people are stepping up and saying, "Hey, we need, like we need the police need to be policed. Like something needs to happen because this stuff's not okay." Oh, I love that. Huffle Mom says, I made a necklace with a key on it. I look at it and say, this is the key to a happy life, to forgive myself, to love myself, to live in the present, and to look forward and hope. I love that so much. That's beautiful. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Spiritual Goddess says, self care is hard right now. I'm having body pains, trying to figure out how I'll leave my gaslighter mother. I feel like giving up because I don't even have energy to take care of myself and clean up. I am really sorry to hear that you're going through that. Yeah, it's hard to take care of ourselves when there's just no energy. When that other person, that kind of this toxic situation can just suck the life right out of a person. Um, some strategies for that are to set a timer of so it's not like this monumental task. So chunking it down into, okay, what can I do on this for the next 10 minutes or 20 minutes? And then that's it. And developing that forward momentum, it's gonna lessen well, it's gonna build traction, but it's also gonna lessen the overwhelm that you're feeling. And it'll eventually get you to where you wanna be. But chunking it down so it doesn't feel like it's this, um, you know, that you have to climb this mountain. Genevieve says, I clean my house by setting a timer, giving each room a specified amount of time. Yeah, I'm a big timer fan as well. I think it's fun. It's kind of like a race the clock. It kind of becomes a game. And it's amazing how much we can get done in such a short amount of time. Like it can make a huge difference with even 5 minutes of focused effort in the kitchen or 10 minutes, in an area. And yeah, it can really just radically change the course of your day or your week. Yeah, I agree, Jack. Terry was saying, so do you think it's a good idea to write a letter to them to say goodbye? I just did no contact with no closure. And Jack said, I think you shouldn't bother. If you write a letter, don't send it to them. Just write it for you only. Yeah, I agree. Um, if you're gonna write a letter, keep it for you. You could do some sort of I don't know, like a closure exercise with you could set it on fire, you could bury it in the backyard, you could um, I don't know, tuck it in your journal or something. But yeah, giving putting any more energy into um, a toxic situation, it's just you're not going to get the closure or the answers or the resolution that you're looking for. Um, if anything, they're going to want to they're going to want to debate you about it. They're going to want to argue about it. They're going to want to, or they might just enjoy it. I don't, depending on kind of what your experience was of like, ooh, I really got under her skin kind of a thing. And, um, I just would say, save your dignity, save your time. Somebody mistreats you. No, you don't need, they know. There's no reason. And if they really truly don't know how awful they behaved, then writing a letter to them isn't going to do anything because they're so far away from understanding appropriate behavior that you're not even sharing the same reality. And I know a lot of people, they talk about, oh, it's immature. You're probably going to hear this a lot from other people out there, like uh, friends, family, maybe even some counselors who are not used to dealing with really manipulative, uh, hurtful people. And normally, I'm a big fan of open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, but only in situations that it's possible. If a person has proven to you that they are incapable of such communication, or if that type of communication only makes things worse, then it's time to deploy a different strategy, which is usually just getting some distance. Because now it's clear, whole proverbial "you're throwing pearls to swine" kind of a thing. That's what it is. So you're better off just distancing yourself. Let's see. Right? Changing my life says, I gotta say, the COVID and now this movement is really showing who people truly are. Yeah, it's been very interesting to see people's responses to that for sure. Let's see. Luna says, uh, with toxic attachments due to trauma bonding, it's really taken me a concerted effort to release negative thoughts and bad energy. It's like he sucked all of the good vibes I used to live by and take. Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how that can happen. And I think in part too, it's because, our brain is more wired to notice things that are problematic than it is to notice things that are good. That's why you could give a person, 100 compliments and one insult, and that insult is going to stick with them a lot longer. So that's part of why these situations can be so traumatic is it's just so much negativity and an erosion oftentimes of who that person, of who we are when that energy is directed towards us. And it just drags us to a really dark place that, like you said, takes a lot of concerted effort to get out of. Oh, very cool. How's that working for you, Huffle Mom? Says when she's depressed, she's been doing the 10 breaths repetitively and repeating to herself, I love myself over and over, just like the guy's advice in last month's book club book. And Jack is saying, yeah, Huffle Mom is practicing the advice and the loving yourself like your life depends on it really well. He says, better than I am. He's like, I didn't really like the book so much. And Huffle Mom, and I agree, he says, well, Jack, maybe that wasn't the book you needed. And it's so true. It's so interesting how that happens, how uh, we can pick up a book at one point and it might only be one or two sentences in it that just is what we're needing to hear at that time, and that can make an ocean of difference. And then there's other times where either that same book or a different book won't resonate at all. Okay, let's see here. um Spiritual Goddess says a lot of people say narcissistic people have a disorder, but I feel that they are aware. My mom is aware for sure. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Those that are aware tend to feel it's either uh, um, it's a level of entitlement that they're either consciously aware of, that they feel like, yeah, absolutely, I am the best. It is my way or no way. They have that arrogance, that entitlement about them, and they know it, or they have that arrogance and entitlement about them and they don't know it, or they have that level of yeah, arrogance or superiority and entitlement, and they hide it really well. Either way, any of those three ways, it's a problem. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll. Samantha's having a hard time. She says, I really don't know how to self-soothe. My parents were emotionally neglectful. Um, I don't know how to love myself when everyone who was meant to or said that they loved me mistreated me. I had to call the crisis team. I need help and support. I'm feeling so alone. I cannot understand how anyone can be so cold when someone is evidently in distress and supposed to love me. And let me scroll up here. I think there was a post a little earlier that might give more context. Hold on just a second. Oh, here we go. She says, I broke down in tears and was triggered, and he refused to come over and comfort me, even though I begged him. I gave the ex another chance for our daughter's sake and because I don't want her to have what I had, a broken family. But he once again gives me the half-baked apology, twists things around on me. And then she said, I broke down in tears and was triggered, and he refused to come over to comfort me, even though I begged him. Yeah. And spiritual goddess says, they couldn't love you because they didn't love themselves, Samantha. You are lovable. And that's the thing with a lot of people, especially for those that are not emotionally available. They don't even know what love is. They really don't. So they're just saying words. It's along the same lines of when somebody says, "Oh, how are you doing today?" "Oh, I'm fine." "How are you?" "Oh, I'm fine." It's just kind of these pleasantries that get tossed around that there's no depth to. And there's people out there, unfortunately, who um, really just don't know what what love truly is like, that it's not just a feeling, it's that deep level of connection and um, appreciation and respect and value that we have towards another person. It's, yeah. So let me think. When a person hasn't grown up with learning how to self-soothe, with learning um, how to really develop if a person has grown up with emotionally neglectful and unavailable parents, then so oftentimes the result is, let's call it an imbalance, an attachment imbalance. And there's different types. They're normally known as attachment disorders, okay? But they can be corrected, so please don't freak out about this. But it can help make your behavior make a lot more sense to you. So this is why I'm bringing this up. And for those that have that anxious style of attachment, it's a or anxious or preoccupied attachment disorder. They fear abandonment. So they hang on to relationships tightly. They don't they Their attitude is generally kind of that ride or die type of mentality, that I'll stay here forever, no matter how horribly you mistreat me, I'm going to stay. And they confuse that for love. But really, what it is it's that deep fear of abandonment, of um, I want to do anything to make this relationship work, no matter how poorly you mistreat me. And that tends to cause a lot of problems because then they tend to gravitate towards and stay with people that show them attention and affection, which on the surface, that seems like that would be a healthy thing, but they get tangled up with a lot of the wrong people because a lot of the wrong people are very quick to to kind of use those tools as a way of getting what they want. So they tend to get tangled up with a lot of problematic partners who are very quick to, you know, um, tell them everything that they want to hear when really that person's just trying to have sex with them, or they're just trying to get them to do something, let them move in or loan them money, or um, they're trying to use them for some reason. But then a person with an anxious attachment style tends to not see that, and they can get hurt repeatedly, which is really tragic. So I would encourage you to consider looking up anxious style of attachment. And because when we start feeling that panicky of, um, I love you, like that we're addicted to this person, that I can't live without you. If you leave, then I have nothing. You're my whole world. That tends to really go hand in hand with that anxious style of attachment. And what it really is it's that wounded child inside who's so starved out for love and this kind of idea of unconditional love, which is what the wounded child is confusing with, commitment that never ends, kind of a thing. And it's that need to have somebody else around to take care of us and just to do the soothing for us and to make us okay. So there's a lot there to untangle, but I think a lot of the answers that you're seeking with this are going to come from digging into that anxious, preoccupied style of attachment, and then and also learning about what it means to be securely attached. So it's kind of one thing to realize, oh yeah, this is actually why. This explains a lot of friendships. This explains a lot of my relationships in the past. But it's also helpful to understand, okay, well, where do I need to go in order for things to start working? And so understanding what a secure attachment style looks like can help kind of be a North Star. And I'm so sorry that you're going through this. I can only imagine how overwhelming this must be. I think it's wonderful that that you're reaching out for help, that you called a crisis team, that you realize that you do need help. Um, and hopefully maybe tonight, um, there's some people in the chat, maybe Jack, can kind of help you brainstorm some other resources that could help. So these situations are incredibly difficult, even if a person can self-soothe. So like I said, I can only imagine, um, how difficult this must be for you. But, please know that you're not alone in all of this. Like, we are here for you. And there's lots of support groups online, um, that are out there. A lot of them are free. So there's also, if anybody, I don't know how low you're feeling, but if you're really feeling low, there's also the National Suicide Hotline number, and they're open 24 hours a day. It's free. It's anonymous. That might be something else to consider. And participating in support groups is is great. If you have, I don't know what kind of the resources in your area, or if you have a counselor, um, but that might be worth looking into. Another something that you might want to look into, that I think will help as far as, mm, with regulating your emotions and learning how to self-soothe and all of that. It's a therapy called DBT. It's dialectical behavioral therapy. And again, I'm not sure where you live in the world, but a lot of places offer it. It's a group type therapy usually, and they offer it at, it's either free or very low cost. So that's something to consider. And you could also go online and look up DBT groups. My guess is that there's probably groups on Facebook where people talk about different strategies and how they're using them, or challenges that they're coming across. And she says, "Okay, you've helped me hugely. I've read your book. I always go back because I crave validation and love." Yes. And you're not alone in that. I think that's the hook for so many people. And there's a lot going on in these relationships, because not only if a person has kind of this anxious style of attachment already, and if there's a lot of trauma bonds that are going on in these dynamics, where it's um, the stress of the bad times, and then the relief of the good times, of, okay, this relationship's going to continue. Those are very, very bonding. It's the different type of bonding. It's like what happens when people go through boot camp together. It's the difference in closeness between going through boot camp with somebody and being in a book club with them. boot camp is a lot more bonding because it's this feeling of we went through this together. We went through hell together. And strangely enough, that's what happens we when a person goes through an abusive relationship. It's that deep connection to the other person. It's not a two-way connection. They don't feel the same way to us, but we tend to feel it. um, it's very significant to them, and that's really difficult to walk away from. Another thing that can really help is, and studies have shown that the number one thing that helps people get out and stay out of abusive relationships is to expand their support system. So it's really difficult to walk away from a toxic relationship if that's all we have. So taking some time to cultivate hobbies, ideally with other people, even though I know COVID has the world kind of on pause right now, but a lot of groups are meeting online. Getting connected with other people as much as you can in the safest way possible right now is is really going to help, because it'll show. And I really think a lot of this is just more kind of like a neurological, like a brain-based process than anything else. Really showing your brain that there's options out there, that life will go on. Like there is life outside of this relationship. That helps to get rid of that attitude of scarcity. So when we're feeling so fearful and anxious about, as I either stay with this relationship where I have nothing, showing our brain, hey, no, we've got other options. It helps to relax that part that's so kind of seized up with anxiety and fear. And it allows for that prefrontal cortex, our thinking part of our brain, to kind of come back online and start working again. So um yeah, and then okay, so Samantha also asks, how do I reparent myself, find self-worth and value, and cope on my own as a single mom? And that's a big question that I'll get to in a second here. And Changing My Life says, I also think codependence has a lot to do with the attachment. I think my guess would be that there's a lot of overlap between um, codependency and an anxious style of attachment. So codependency is this level of excessive emotional support on another person. So we're looking to this other person to meet all of a significant portion of our emotional needs. And that tends to go hand in hand with that anxious style of attachment. And I would say just most attachment styles in general, frankly. There's how to have a healthy connection, healthy love with another person is not something that's taught. It's not something that's role modeled at all in the slightest. It tends to be the opposite that's role modeled. You look at movies and music and TV and all of this stuff, and it's all like way toxic and not even close to being either anywhere near reality or anywhere near healthy. So I heard a great way to describe this the other day, like the difference between um, kind of a healthy relationship and then or like the level of dependence on another person. So you have dependence, which would be like the letter T. Like they're carrying you or you're carrying them. It looks like the letter, like a lowercase t. Then you have um, also more of like that, I'd say codependence, which is like a capital letter A. You know, you're leaning on them, perhaps they're leaning on you. There's this excessive level of reliance on the other person, where if one moves, then the other person falls over. Whereas a healthy relationship, there's that level of interdependence where where each person can rely on the other, but is not looking to the other person to make them whole or complete, more like a capital H. So they're able to hold their own, they're able to be self-sufficient, and they're coming together out of this level of deep appreciation and love for the other person, not out of a place of um, fear or anxiety or need. So, okay, Samantha, to get back to your question, how do you reparent yourself and find self-worth? Okay, so let's start. Let me break it down. How do you reparent yourself? Uh, a lot of it starts with examining what you didn't get as a child, and mainly in terms of emotional support. So, it can be anything. Uh, maybe you didn't have the ability to have fun. Maybe you weren't comforted. Maybe you weren't. Um, maybe your parents had really high expectations, and they just didn't ever cut you any slack. So now that you're an adult, parenting yourself would be, or reparenting yourself would be giving yourself that which you didn't receive as a child. So cutting yourself some slack, talking to yourself in a loving, supportive way, um, you know, yeah, being supportive of yourself, um, just nourishing yourself in the ways that you didn't get when you were younger, and that just happens really moment by moment, and a lot of it's going to be catching the and kind of observing and observing your self-talk, and then making a conscious effort to change it as you notice it coming up. So if you notice yourself really getting a lot of that negative self-talk, that maybe your parents either said those same things to you, or maybe it was just implied, you know? And so catching yourself when you're thinking stuff like that, and then stepping in as that kind, loving, supportive parent. Finding self-worth, that's really challenging. I guess maybe perhaps realizing that, it's just that you have value because you're here on the planet, and that you can impact change, positive change, especially in your life and in the lives of those around you, especially your kids. So, you have value, you are valuable. You would be significantly missed if you were not here. You have a lot of value to your kids. You have a lot of value as a human being and what you can contribute. So truly finding your self-worth, I think, just comes from truly understanding that you have value simply because you're alive. And putting that value in motion is going to mean that you're valuing your time, your energy, your emotions, your body, your environment, your money, your kind of everything that's around you, that you're treating all of that with value, because it's all an extension. It all impacts and is intertwined with you. So treating all of that with value, and really, once you start doing that, it feels good. It feels good to treat yourself with value. So it's not something that I think a lot of people have to really work at. It's once you start, it feels so good, it kind of pulls you, that you really don't have to push yourself too much. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. Phoenix Rescue says, I came into the chat at the right time. You're talking about self-worth and value. I needed to hear this. And Changing My Life says, yeah, self-talk makes a difference, especially in front of a mirror. And one of the things too with self-worth and value is, and I really just think this just takes time and practice, because it's getting back in tune with ourselves. And I really do feel, at least at this place in time, I think everybody, by the time you're 18, we are so far away from our authentic self because of expectations of parents or friends or teachers, or hurtful things that were done to us or said to us, or different defenses that have been kicked up inside of us, or movies, media, TV. Like, there's so many different ways that we can really get pulled off center, and we don't even realize it. So, the whole thing with self-worth is learning to tune into yourself, and to realize what it feels like when you're not being treated, or when you're not treating yourself with value. What does that feel like? And generally, it feels frustrating, irritating, upsetting, disappointing, angering. Um, it feels uncomfortable. There's a lot of unpleasant emotions that go along with that. How does it feel when you're being treated with value? You tend to feel appreciated, safe, secure, comfortable. Things are smooth. Expectations are appropriate. There's a sense of ease about that when you're treating yourself with value. And let me just make something clear too. A lot of people think, and I used to think this too, that when I say treating yourself with value, this isn't the same as pampering yourself. That's nice. I mean, it's nice to take time to have a bubble bath, or, to paint your nails, or whatever. But I'm talking about valuing yourself in little ways throughout the day. So saying yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no. And going to bed a little earlier if you're just absolutely wiped, if you're just tired by the end of the day. Or um, allowing yourself to kind of, I don't know, veg out and watch an extra half hour of your favorite show. Or kind of knowing what you need, and then being able to give yourself that in a moderate, appropriate way. So you're truly valuing yourself. You're not overindulging yourself, right? You're not spending a bunch of money you don't have, or calling in sick to work for a week, or overindulgence that's going to cause problems down the road. If we truly value ourselves, it's going to work in the short term, and it's going to work in the long term, because it's a solid investment in us. And also, kind of the other added upside to that is, once you start getting back in tune with what it feels like to treat yourself with value, it just feels so good. In time, it really does just become second nature. And then it's going to start opening up all of these other ways that you probably never even thought about, of, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that I didn't value myself in this way, or I didn't even think that this was an option, or, oh my goodness. It's it's a rabbit hole, but it's exciting, because that's when your life really starts working. The book club, Samantha, that we discussed last month, and I need to put my book club notes online here. I'll try to get that done by the end of the week. But it's had a lot to do with, actually was all about loving yourself. And he mentioned doing affirmations, the kind of this mirror work, where you look into the mirror, you look into your eyes in the mirror, and you tell yourself that you love yourself. So I love myself. And you just keep repeating this, looking into your eyes, or you can repeat this to yourself. He'd also suggested doing this with 10 deep breaths. You can say it in your mind. You can say it out loud. You can say it loudly. You can say it quietly. It's up to you. But giving yourself that love that you didn't receive early on. At first, it's going to feel really uncomfortable and really maybe weird or inauthentic. But over time, it it does start to really sink in, and you'll feel it at a more emotional level. Samantha says, is someone with narcissistic traits truly incapable of loving anyone else? Well, I guess it depends on kind of what, like, to what degree we're talking about. You know, if a person has shown, uh, you know, a lack of empathy, a lack of remorse, a general lack of indifference. So back to attachment styles. There's 4. So you have secure attachment, you have anxious, preoccupied, you have fearful, avoidant, and then you have dismissive, avoidant. And these all happen, it's thought to happen before the age of 3. So pretty early on in a person's life. And dismissive avoidant is it's really where a person's defenses just go up. They do not connect to other people. So, and for some of us that have gone through enough stuff in our life, we can feel that way, where it's this wall that goes up, and out of self-protection, and even as a child, out of self-protection, you become more dismissive. Like, I don't need you. You become wantless, needless, and very quick to kind of pick up your marbles and go home, kind of a thing. So you have a lot of survivors of trauma that have this type of attachment style, but this is also how a lot of narcissists and people that are more on the high level of narcissism and sociopathy attach to others as well, meaning really not at all. So there's that level of connection that they can really enjoy your company, but then it doesn't take a lot for them to just pick up and move on. There isn't that level of like deep connection. And for those that have more of that anxious avoidant type style of attachment, what they're experiencing, like their experience of love tends to be, it's clinging to somebody for dear life. Like, if I let go, I'm going to die, kind of a thing. And they mistake that for love. That's not love either. That's fear, and that's anxiety. It's fear. It's major fears of abandonment. So this is why I was encouraging you to kind of go through and look at these different attachment styles. I think you'll see a lot more of, yourself and your partner, and it can be really eye-opening. And the thing is, if you are in a relationship with somebody who has, kind of any one of these attachment styles, especially dismissive avoidant is the hardest attachment style to change, because they're not interested in being deeply attached to other people. And I'm not saying that this is or isn't your partner, I don't know. But those that have that style of attachment, it's really difficult for them to, and they have to really, 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 really want to tear down those walls and to get emotionally invested in another person. And for them, getting emotionally invested in a person it can be so scary, it equates to death. But for the anxious attached, the anxious preoccupied person, it's the exact opposite. Without that relationship, that means death. So the more the anxious style attachment person is wanting to hold on to the dismissive avoidant, the more the dismissive avoidant is turned off and runs the opposite direction. So attachment styles are a very real thing and really play a part in people's relationships. It's so much more. Having a relationship actually work requires so much more than communication or, love. It requires doing a lot of this work and having that growth mindset of and that desire to be in a relationship with that other person and the desire to make it better. And there's not a lot of people out there that I think are actually really growth oriented. Um, Samantha says, my father, I discovered later in life, was a pedophile. I cannot bear to look at myself in the mirror, to attempt positive affirmations because I have his eyes. Well, you know what? It sounds like you have maybe some of the best features of your dad. And that's okay. And that's okay. So there's, there's a lot that's right about you, Samantha. Oh, let's see. Luna says, Dana, I know that there are many messages coming through here, but please could you read the rest of my messages to you above? Thank you for your help. Okay, let me scroll up and look here. Luna, 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 Luna. I'm still scrolling here. Sorry, there is a lot. There's a lot of messages here. Luna, let's see, how far up are these messages, Luna? Oh, okay. Well, Luna says, also, I would like to extend my sincere condolences to you for your recent loss in your family, Dana. Dear Dana, I first came across you through your live streams with Angie. Are you ladies still running the live streams? I could use some more support. Yes, they are still going every Tuesday. And thank you so much for your condolences. I appreciate it. It's still hard. Grief is a really interesting, difficult thing. It just, yeah, working through. I still think I'm in shock. It's hard to believe that my dad's gone. Yeah, Genevieve was saying, she said, this is what I tell my children about them regarding their NPD, sex addict, child, sexual offender father, that you got all of the best qualities of mom and dad. No one is perfect and we each choose our own way. I think that's a great answer to give to that, because kids especially, sort of like, well, gosh, I am half of each parent, right? Biologically, I'm half of each parent. And if I have one parent who has done these horrific things, then what does that mean about me? Am I just half rotten? And no, that doesn't mean that at all. Yeah, we do choose our own way. And And sometimes it can be helpful to just recognize, you know what, like there were a lot of things that were really rotten with, uh, really problematic with a parent. And, um, but then acknowledging, okay, but you know what, these are the good things that I got out of this. And these are the good things that I'm going to do with my life. Okay, Jack was saying he's got some more of Luna's messages. She says, good evening, Dana. I'm new here. My first time participating in your live chat. It's been 7 months narcissist free and I'm doing all right. Something up with toxic attachments due to trauma bonding. It's really taken a concerted effort to release negative thoughts and bad energy. Yes. Let's see here. Jennifer says, my narcissistic best friend when I was little, who is now my stepsister, had that attachment or detachment avoidant style. I remember I told her once my mom wouldn't let me play at her house. I made it up because I didn't know how to tell her I didn't want to. But she said, fine, I guess I don't want to be your friend. I cried when she told me that. I think I was 8 and she was 7 at the time. Okay, I'm not sure if Luna was asking about my books or not. I'm sorry, there's just this chat's really going tonight. Yes, you can find out more about my books and the podcast and everything else if you want to head over to my website, thriveafterabuse.com, or you can find me, go to Amazon and type in Dana Morningstar, and you can find all of my books and stuff that way. Salon says, 4 years on from discovering Pete Walker's book, CPTSD, I am now realizing I have major codependence issues and an outer critic. I thought I totally didn't. Isn't that wild how that happens? It's a rabbit hole, where you think you have all the clarity you need, and then you find there's another level, and then another level. Yeah, I realized not too long ago, I never really thought that I had codependence, because I would say that I'm more of that dismissive avoidant attachment style as well. And that just happened after, kind of what I went through. And it was not a conscious thing. It was a self-protective thing. And so I was always confused when people would talk about codependency and narcissism or that. And I was like, you know what? I got tangled up with 2 very sociopathic men. And I don't think that had anything to do with me being codependent. Because once I found out what was going on, I was done. Like, I just looked back and didn't ever go back. And then later, kind of learning more about codependency and about dismissive avoidant. And it was like, you know what? Yeah, with relationships, definitely more on the dismissive avoidant end, just because I'd been hurt so much before. But with friends, it had been more of this kind of codependent, anxious attachment style, where it was this excessive emotional reliance on friends, on relationships, and not wanting to let them go, and not even not wanting to let them go, but making them my whole world, which of course is very limiting and is not a healthy way, not a healthy or balanced way to go about things. So yeah, it's interesting when you're like, no, it does not pertain to me at all, but it does, but maybe not in a way that you would think it normally does. Yeah, it's weird. Let's see. Jennifer says, there's a YouTuber I sometimes watch. Her channel is called Alexandria Girly Talk, and she mentions how self-value is different than self-maintenance, even though her channel is about beauty care. And she says the reason is because self-maintenance or beauty care can be tedious and feeling like work. I've seen her channel I've seen a few of her videos. I just stumbled across her not like in the past couple weeks. Yeah, I really like her videos. I think she takes the more recent ones are more to me they kind of go hand in hand with a lot of self-value. It's taking good care of yourself. It is itself. And I think self-value is self-maintenance. You know, it's just taking good care of yourself. It doesn't have to be, it's nice. It feels nice to be kind of pampering of yourself, you know, to, I don't know, use soap that you like the smell of, or to, I don't know, it's the little things. It doesn't have to be super expensive or really time consuming. It's just those little things. But I think truly valuing ourselves, it's across the board. But it's like pulling a string on a sweater. If we just start somewhere, then we'll just keep going, because your life just starts working. Things just work much smoother if you're maintaining everything, right? As it needs to be. Genevieve is saying a person with narcissistic traits closer to the end of NPD, I don't believe they can truly love. They love as best as they can with their limited understanding and capability. Yeah. I think Pete Walker's explanation of this is really good. So he talks about kind of these different personality styles that develop. And I don't know if he's the one that came up with this, but I've never ever heard this connection being made before. And I think he's spot on with it. We all have different defense mechanisms. We don't choose which defense mechanism is used. That's something that happens deep within our brain. And we have Pete Walker describes that we have the fight, the flight, the freeze, or he calls it the fawn. I call it the friend response. So it's how we handle stress, basically. And so we all have our primary defense mechanism, and then we have a secondary one. And well, and I should say, however, for a person to be like a healthy, balanced person, they're able to shift in and out of all four of these different defense mechanisms when appropriate. So they're not locked into one or two. And so some people that get locked into that fight defense, which is anger, when there's anger present, connection is not present. So if a person has kind of just this axe to grind, if they've gone through something really traumatic, there's a lot of anger built up, their walls are thick and high, and nobody's getting across those. They might be able to be nice and friendly, but they keep everybody at arm's length. And those kind of defenses, they might be, because we don't know how anybody else feels, right? Like we only know how we feel. are how each of us feels, how we feel individually, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We only know how we experience emotions. So so for a person, if a person has kind of I don't know, like a more shallow feeling of emotions, they're not going to know. They're really not going to know, because all they have to go off of is their own experience. So they might realize something's a little bit different to them. They might look around and kind of be like, wow, it's, how other people seem to relate to other people is not the way that I feel inside. Or other people seem to care about things at a level that I just don't care about. They might have some signs that something's a little bit off, but they're going to have difficulty really recognizing where the issues are. And for a lot of people with those, especially with that anger defense that's up, they confuse kind of the more fleeting emotions with emotions of depth. So they confuse lust for love, for example. And that's why you see a lot of kind of people with antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. They're impulsive. There's a lack of remorse because they feel entitled. They feel entitled to do whatever it is they want to do, and they feel justified. And they don't get attached to other people. They don't care. So they get attached to other people as we would to, an inanimate object. There's not that level of depth there. It's not a reflection of other people. It's a reflection of what's going on within them. So yeah, their concept of love is, for sure, it's very, very conditional, and it's very superficial, and it's very fleeting, and it's very much based on, you know, are you who they want you to be? So, and I think anybody that's grown up with a narcissistic parent realizes this. Like you truly realize how there's just not that level of attachment to their own children. So it's either, you behave a certain way, you play baseball, you become an attorney, you do this, or they're just not interested. Like you either need to be the person that they want you to be, or you're out of their life. Like there's no room, there's no appreciation or acknowledgement of another person's individuality. Everybody's an extension of them. Jennifer says, so can you have combining defense mechanisms like fawn, but also freeze? Yes, he has it all, kind of different combinations. I'm trying to think, mapped out. I think borderline personality disorder. He was saying the root is really more in primary, and I could be off on this, but primary one is fight, secondary is fawn. What is it? He has a bunch of them listed out. It's interesting. So kind of what's the primary defense there? What's the secondary one? But the good news is a lot of this stuff, you can, untangle it and have secure attachments. But you got to know what you're trying to untangle first. And understanding how you handle stress, like what is your primary defense mechanism? What is your secondary one? What is your attachment style? I really feel like this should be basic screening at a psychological initial assessment. It's that major. It's really a significant deal, and it would help a person profoundly to better understand themselves if they were aware of these things. Let's see. Gareth says, has anyone heard of the book, The Body Keeps the Score? Oh, absolutely. It's a wonderful one. I think we've done 2 different book clubs on it, actually, over our time here. Gareth recommends the book Thinking Fast and Slow. I think you recommended that, and I think I have that book on Audible, but I haven't listened to it yet. Okay, so back to what you were saying, Jennifer. I'm trying to think of the other one, like the freeze response. I think he was relating that more to kind of dissociation, like dissociative disorders or psychotic disorders. The friend one, if friend is primary, then, and you can, and you can have, I think he just listed the main ones. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Hold on just a second and I'll read it. Book club notes. Pete Walker, here we go. Okay, so here's what Pete Walker has to say about it. He says, he calls it the 4F type. So understanding your 4F type, you have fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. If a person has good enough parenting, then they will be able to shift in and out of these various 4F types when necessary. If not, then they are locked into one primary type, which dictates how they react to stressful people and situations. So fight mode is assertiveness, anger, aggression. And when this defense is in balance, we see it as assertiveness, boundaries, leadership, and courage. When this defense is out of balance, we see it as controlling, entitlement, kind of that stereotypical type A personality, narcissistic, perfectionist, sociopathic, scapegoating, blaming everyone else, relieves this person's pain in the moment. Their ego is so fragile, it can't handle any criticism whatsoever. And how they connect to other people. They use control to connect to others, and they use rage in order to feel safe. So in order to protect their sense of self. Healing the fight defense. And this is a hard one because, again, people with fight defense, if that's their primary one, they have a very difficult time admitting that there's not even admitting, acknowledging that there could possibly be anything wrong with them. It's a very immature worldview. And it's this idea of however I should be able to treat other people based on how I feel. So if and I've used this example before, like, if you're at the grocery store, right, and you're really hungry and you're tired and there's just lots of people there, and that frustration that comes up where you're starting to feel hangry, like hateful and angry, and it can feel justified where somebody is maybe writing a check at the checkout line, right? Or they're walking with 4 people in a line down the aisle. They're just in the way. It's slowing you down. You're frustrated. We can all get frustrated and angry. But if we have that level of emotional maturity, we realize that it's not okay to take that out onto other people. And we're able to use that level of self-control to not take that out on other people. But for those when that fight defense is the primary one, and think about it in your own life where you've been so angry that you feel so justified that anger is the primary thing. It comes out. So then that's a problem, right? And so hopefully most of us, we can try to get that level of anger under control to where we're not lashing out at other people. And if we do lash out at other people, we realize that is not okay. And it's one thing to feel frustrated and angry, but it's another thing to lash out at people. So, okay, so the flight defense, he says it's avoidance mixed with anxiety. When this defense is in balance, it's knowing when to retreat or disengage from problematic people or situations. We can keep ourselves preoccupied. We have constructive daydreaming, being creative, efficient, self-motivated. When this defense is out of balance, it's obsessive compulsive, it's drivenness, it's being a busyaholic, mood disorders, constant thinking, pursuit of reckless activities, being addicted to adrenaline, avoidance, excessive sleeping. He says he thinks ADHD is part of it, emotional collapse, numbing out, disassociation. How a person with their primary defense being flight, how they connect to others is they attempt to be perfect in order to connect to others and attempt to be perfect in order to feel safe. And it's the feeling of, I will be good enough once I achieve XYZ goal. It's the I'll be happy when kind of a thing. Like that they don't deserve love and acceptance now. Let's see. Positive characteristics of the flight defense is they can disengage from problematic situations. They have a healthy level of knowing when to retreat, perseverance if need be, because they can be so goal-oriented. And detrimental character traits, panicness, drivenness, they can be micromanaging, rushing, worrying. How to heal the flight defense is learning relaxation techniques, making time to be still and present. And then the freeze defense is avoidance and disassociating. And he says, he describes it as, well, don't just do something, stand there. Gosh, I like that. It's true. You just get frozen. You're absolutely frozen. So when this defense is in balance, we're able to be mindful, aware, present in the moment. When this defense is out of balance, we're disassociating, we're hiding, we're isolating, we're a couch potato, we're afraid of trying. So there's that fear of achievement. And he further divides this up into right and left brain disassociation. So right brain disassociation is tiredness, sleep, self-distraction, daydreams, which is the opposite of verbally ventilating, verbally expressing our problems or concerns. Left brain disassociation is obsessiveness, trivialization, such as sports statistics or celebrity lives, intellectualization, focused thinking. Logic is used in an attempt to protect from the messy world of feelings. And how these kinds of, a person with the freeze defense connects to others, they generally don't. Or if they do, it's online or in a very kind of arm's length, limited way. There really isn't any sincere intimacy there. They might say all the right things, they might kind of go through the actions, but it's an act. Let's see, fawn. So the fawn defense is ingratiating behavior, being overly compliant and overly friendly. When this defense is in balance, it equates to compromise, fairness, peacemaking, and listening. When this defense is out of balance, it leads to codependency, a loss of self, being a doormat, a victim, and also early on, a parentified child. How they how they connect to others. They over listen, they overdo for other people. They merge with another person in order to connect. This leads to blurred or non-existent boundaries on their end and enabling and ingratiating behavior in order to feel safe. They sacrifice important parts of themselves, such as dignity, self-esteem, and identity in order to keep relationships going. how they attempt to keep themselves safe, groveling and being forever forgiving in order to stay safe and keep relationships going. They focus on their partner, which helps them to avoid risking rejection. Like, if I can just keep making you happy, then you won't leave. Let's see. So, how to heal the fawn defense. Reducing the amount of time you spend listening to others, as well as practicing and broadening verbal and emotional self-expression. Let's see. So basically realizing that it's okay to have relationships that are based out of equality, that are more equal as far as time and support, where it doesn't need to be so one-sided where you're supporting them the other person 100%. And he also says recovering the fight response is vital in recovering from CPTSD. We use the fight response for interrupting the inner critic, setting and holding boundaries, realizing when we've been mistreated, and to make our healing a priority. And this book is just gold. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to get it on Audible or get it through your library on audio and listen to it over repeatedly, because it's so chock full of stuff, and he's so right on with all of this, especially getting back in tune with our fight response. Out of all of these different responses, fight is challenging because that person they're aggressive. They don't want help. They don't have any, they're locked in that fight mode. But when a person is in freeze mode, where they're just so depressed that they can't get off the couch or they can't do anything, we have to be able to get back in tune with that fight mode to realize, to get energy to do anything, because a lot of that energy comes from the ability or the awareness that we need to be self-protective. So it's that imbalance fight response. And he's like, you can tell when there's unprocessed trauma and emotional wounds present when you are overusing one or two of these defenses. And I really like that. So here's some subtypes of the 4 Fs. You have fawn freeze. This person doesn't recognize abuse. They blame themselves. They're rehooked by crumbs of kindness from charming bullies, which is often more than what they ever got at home when they were a child. Learned helplessness sets in, and they feel powerless over changing anything in their life. So this kind of behavior, I would say these types of people tend to, I should take some time and write down some common phrases that I've heard that I think fall into these different types. The fawn type especially tends to be more of, they'll say, I'm just so in tune with other people. I'm an empath. I just care so much. And they are definitely the overgivers of the world. Fawn flight is kind of the super nurse type personality. They're providing for the needs of others first. It's kind of the Mother Teresa type. They rush from needy person to needy person. They become obsessive. They're always busy. They're always in fixer mode. Fight fawn combines narcissism and codependence. It's the smother mother duality. It's the I love you to death. coercive caretaking. The fawn behavior is typically devoid of real empathy or compassion. So, yeah, coercive caretaking, I think that's a great way to describe it. It's very controlling, but it's supposedly done out of caring. Oh, I'm going to kind of swoop in and do all of these things for you, even if you don't want them, because you just need this done. And really, it's not about caring about the other person. It's about needing their lives to be a certain way in order for that person to feel okay. The fawn fight goes back and forth between codependence and that narcissism, but there's less intensity and entitlement. The flight freeze prefers the whole do-it-yourself isolationism and fantasy. So they alternate between excessive busyness and exhaustion and collapse. Fight freeze dominates others through passive-aggressive means, such as foul moods, disapproving glances. It's all about them, and they aren't interested in having interactions with other people. He says in here too, one of the an exercise he recommends is finding your dominant type and hybrid, and what percentage of time you think that you spend in each of these responses. And I really like that. I think that's a really great exercise. So the fight mode, and it's on a continuum. Like you said, there's imbalance and then there's out of balance. So there's fight, which goes from assertiveness to bullying. There's flight, which is efficiency to drivenness or busyness. There's freeze, which ranges from peacefulness to catatonia. There's a fawn, helpfulness to servitude. And let's see. Also, he mentions too about he touches here on reparenting. So the fawn defense, he says it's important to handle anger and hurt in constructive ways. This often means getting in tune with how to nurture and protect yourself. It might help to think of this as reparenting your inner child by mothering, nurturing, and self-fathering or protecting yourself in ways that you never received growing up. The fawn defense becomes codependency, which is a fear-based inability to express rights, needs, and boundaries in a relationship. It is a disorder of assertiveness characterized by a dormant fight response and susceptibility to being exploited, abused, and/or neglected. The belief is that it is safer, and the only way to keep a relationship going is to agree instead of disagree, to offer care instead of asking for help, to suppress feelings and opinions, and instead defer to others. There are several key goals in healing the fawn defense. Reduce inauthentic mirroring, reduce acting amused at destructive sarcasm, reduce acting loving when someone is punishing, reduce acting forgiving or allowing access to your life when someone is repetitively hurtful, and setting boundaries to stay true to your own emotions. So this is so good. Let me read through these notes. It's been a minute since I've seen them, and I will work on, let me make a note. I'll work on getting those up on my website as well, because it's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. This is the Pete Walker book. Okay. Yeah, Jennifer says, yeah, that probably would be a good journaling exercise, trying to figure out where you fall most often and where you don't. Yep. And why. Oh, that's interesting. Jack was saying according to his web search, tells him to look at Peter Levine's book, Healing Trauma, to read more about the 4 Fs. Oh, I guess we read the book, Waking the Tiger. So maybe he does get into it in his healing. Oh, let me add that to my list. His healing trauma book. Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense because they kind of, Peter Levine, the book that we read in book club by Peter Levine, the Waking the Tiger, he talks about uh, kind of in some ways, kind of discharging the energy um, that gets stored in our body when it's not able to, when that emotion's not able to be fully processed. So he gives the example of if somebody goes through a traumatic event and then later they're experiencing a lot of anxiety and they don't know why. And um and it's because that all of this adrenaline and everything is still in their system. It hasn't been able to be discharged. But unfortunately, so much of the advice having to do with processing emotions, especially anxiety, is to calm down. And Peter Levine was saying, no, it's the exact opposite. When a person has all of this active energy in their body, they need to get it out. So physically, um, he recommends physically or actually going through the process of like running, like kind of visualizing that you're running away from a tiger and then you're getting yourself to safety. So this emotion's able to complete itself, to go from that spike in adrenaline, um, to you being able to escape, and then that period of resolution where heart rate goes down, respirations go down, kind of things return back to normal. Let's see here. Yes, sorry guys. This book that I was just reading from is Pete Walker's. It's called CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving. Pete Walker has another book out. I want to say it's called like the Tao of Healing. And that's not correct. Let me look it up. That's going to bug me. I want to make sure I do him justice because y'all know I love me some Pete Walker. Pete Walker, the Tao of Fully Feeling. So, and I believe we read that one for book club too. So I'll have to look up those notes. Um, that was fantastic. He really goes through the process of what he believes the process of healing is. And I mean, and again, uh, I think he's spot on in a lot of ways. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Um, Sorry, I was out of the chat for so long. Now I'm trying to get caught up here. Okay, sorry. Scrolling. Jennifer is saying, oh, okay, because I do flip around from type to type, but I really tend to not go into fight mode. Is there something wrong with me if I don't have one defense, but I use the others? I wouldn't say that there's something wrong with you, uh, but there's an imbalance present. And so I think there's a lot of us that have gone through abuse who are very out of touch with our fight mode. I think that probably is the most common response for anybody that's been abused in any way, shape, or form. Because, well, I think for a lot of reasons, they weren't ever allowed to be angry. They weren't they're afraid of being angry. They're not comfortable with their anger. They don't know they don't know how to moderate their anger. And so when a person like this who is not able to have that experience with, kind of controlling their emotions, they just at an unconscious level, they just kind of turn it off. And so when that anger does come back on, it's like a fire hose. And that can be really overwhelming and scary for them and for everybody around them, 'cause they're they struggle with knowing that middle ground of assertiveness. And so they tend to either go from passive. The more their boundaries are crossed, then they might go to passive aggressive, and then they go to full out aggressive. It's very difficult for them. It's difficult for a lot of people in general just to be assertive, because that is where true vulnerability and intimacy happen, because that person's uh putting themselves out there honestly, and wanting to be solutions oriented towards something. And that's the risk of rejection. It's the risk of a person leaving. It's uncomfortable. That's why most people don't have a hard time with assertiveness. So for you, Jennifer, um, with getting back in tune with your fight mode, it's it's that ability, like in a healthy fight mode, it's that realization of that you matter just as much as anyone else. And um, realizing that like a healthy fight mode means you have to have that in order to be able to be self-protective, because without that fight mode, then we don't set boundaries, we don't move ourselves out of harm's way. We tend to just take it and take it and take it, and being mistreated, and um, you know, being in these uncomfortable situations and bad things. We tend to keep getting victimized, because we don't deep down we don't feel that we're worth protecting. So it's vital. This, and I think it might have been Pia Melody who was talking about this. I don't forget which book this was in, but um, was talking about codependence, and I would say dependence as well, where if that imbalance is not corrected, it can lead to death. And I agree completely, because a person will continue to find themselves, they'll stay in relationships that are so toxic and so damaging, and that can get so abusive that they're killed in relationships, or um, the stress is so much that they end up developing all kinds of diseases and disorders. It's a problem. I mean, if you think about an animal in the wild, if an animal didn't have these basic instincts, because this is what they are, we call them defense mechanisms, but and animals have them too, right? Animals have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn to some extent. Mammals do, anyhow. So if they think about an animal that didn't have one of those, and at what a disadvantage it would be. So yeah, it's important that we're able to get in tune with all of them. And Jennifer, we had talked before. You were saying with your therapist, we talked a little bit about this before. I don't know if you ever spoke to her about this, but um, using that time, or asking her if you can use that time in some of your sessions to work on boundaries. So practicing saying no, that's about the safest way you can do it, is practicing with a therapist that you have that's a quote unquote good enough therapist, right? That's a safe environment for you. You can you're just going through the motions of this, and that you guys can role play. So that might be something to consider bringing up with her. Darlene says, "Oh, I would lose to a goldfish when it comes to attention span. If I were to get a book, I would read 2 to 3 chapters and put it down for a week or 6, no matter how interesting it is." 2 to 3 paragraphs, not chapters. Yeah. Well, and that's another interesting thing too about trauma is, again, from like this neurological standpoint, there's so many brain changes that are going on. So when a person is under a significant amount of stress, it's like your brain downshifts. And so that what we consider to be like the human part of our brain, that prefrontal cortex, the logic and critical thinking part of our brain, it largely goes offline. And we're in these survival, the deeper parts of our brain, the limbic system, the amygdala, these parts of our brain are what's driving our behavior. And this behavior, because it's impulsive, it's instinctual, it's instant gratification, it's designed to survive. So it's very much in the moment. It's not a long-term strategy for sure, because it tends it tends to only work in that moment. It's not how we want to like live our life, you know? Um, but when a person's having a lot of anxiety, that's the part of the brain that's working. And they're not able to make really solid decisions. They're not able to concentrate for long periods of time because they're in that panic mode. And so this is part of it with moving through all of this, is giving yourself that compassion and grace, and kind of lightening your load. So as far as expectations you have for yourself, your brain is just at a very different stage when a person's in crisis, and even after they've been out of crisis for a while. It's just going to take a little while for your brain to go back to kind of settle down and get back to normal and have that level of safety and security. So people joke. I mean, I used to joke about that, and call it, I felt like I had mashed potatoes for brains. I couldn't remember anything. I couldn't think clearly. I'd never experienced brain fog like that before in my life. It was absolutely wild. And it tends to resolve in time, but just something to be aware of. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Jennifer says, okay, well, it sounds like you were able to have a, an honest conversation with your therapist. That's fantastic. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Gareth asked, Dana, do you think mindfulness should be taught in schools? Yes, I do. I think any type of mind body skills, how to handle stress, right? Like how to handle stress, how to handle anxiety, how to set boundaries, how to value yourself, how to um just kind of, kids, thankfully, kids are being taught more like basic life skills as far as paying bills and managing money, and how to read a lease and how to fill out a job application, or how to write a resume. These are all fantastic, but there needs to be that deeper level of handling, how do you handle anger, frustration, stress, the kind of the emotional awareness part of it all really needs to be taught. There's just no reason. Like, why? Like, why do people, we don't need to reinvent the wheel every single time. We don't need to wait until somebody's in a ditch to teach them, um, these life skills. If as a society we were more proactive about, teaching kids about, and because people feel so alone when they experience certain emotions that they're just not used to. It's uncomfortable, and especially if certain emotions just aren't allowed. They're not discussed in their family or in their culture or whatever. They don't say anything, and of course that doesn't work for the long term. Those emotions just grow, and it leads to all kinds of issues. So, Darlene is saying audio is a good idea. I can listen much longer than I can read. Yeah, and one of the things I've been doing, Darlene, for years is I've been doing this book club, and part of it, well, there's lots of different reasons I do it, but, um, is because people that have been through trauma, asking them to sit down and read a book is it's it's like asking, a 2-year-old to sit still for 5 hours during an opera. Like, it's not reasonable. It's not a reasonable expectation because of, for the 2-year-old, kind of where they are developmentally, but for the trauma survivor, what's going on with their brain. So it doesn't work. And unfortunately, right now at this time in the world, there's so much information out there, but it's in really lengthy books. And so part of my whole concept behind book, again, I just like, a lot of what I do is what I needed back then, like hindsight being what it is. Like, okay, this might help somebody else. This might help. This is what I think is needed, kind of a thing. So with the book clubs, because I love to read, going through these books and then picking out what I think to be like the main takeaways. And then I was putting all the notes on the website. So I have 5 years worth of books on the website, but I'm in the process of revamping everything. So the notes are slowly going back up. Right now, the only notes that are currently up are the ones from Divorce Poison. But they will be going up, and maybe I can also make them into podcast, like mini podcast episodes. I was having We were doing the book club discussions because I thought that would be helpful for people to hear um, to hear a discussion. So you're not just limited to my, to my viewpoint, right? You're hearing it from different people and what they thought was and wasn't helpful and their takeaways. I think that just is a lot more value. Um, but I think it might also be helpful just maybe to have a simple podcast of just like the top 7 takeaways of each book or something. Luna asks, "Are these live streams always on at Wednesday at this time?" I try to have them be. Um, so 8:30 PM Eastern Standard Time. They go for 3 hours if we can go that long. So, let's see. Let me scroll. Darlene says, "Oh, I knew you did the book clubs, but I never joined because I figured I would never read the books and would look dumb in the discussions." Nah. Yeah, I don't even think a lot of people read the books, to tell you the truth, that show up in the discussion, and that's totally okay. The questions that people still ask are wonderful. Jennifer was saying, "My therapist implied that she was thinking I only needed a few more sessions until she thinks I may be done, but I'm scared I don't feel done I think there's still a lot more work to do, but I don't know, quote unquote, how. Um, have you ever kind of written I would explore that, Jennifer. I would write that down. And maybe this is as far as you can kind of go with her. And maybe it's time to find somebody else. But I would and if that is even if you don't find another therapist, even if you kind of go the self-help route, but regardless, if it's self-help or therapist, uh, it can really be helpful for you to write down the areas that you think need some more work so you can kind of give yourself a direction in which to head. So, okay, let's see. Um, let's see. Wonder Doggy asked one question, but I feel like I'm missing a big part of it. He just said something about broken women. I would imagine there was more to that, but I don't see anything. Okay. Uh, Jennifer says it's hard for me to focus on reading for long periods of time, and I have to reread a paragraph a few times in a row, which gets frustrating, especially the less interested I am in the topic. So I think my therapist thinks I'm ADD for that reason and always feeling like I'm in this freeze fog mode. So maybe ADD meds would help, but I'm just scared of trying and then having it not help because Adderall and Ritalin can be dangerous, or so I've heard. Yeah. Well, I would talk to um, a psychiatrist or whoever is going to be prescribing you the medication. They have non-stimulant ADD meds out there, like Strattera is one, for example. So, um, you will focus more on them, but if you're not thinking that it's necessarily, there's so much more to ADD than just distraction. So I would encourage you to read up on it. Um, it's and it could have, I don't know. There's just a lot more to it. It's a kind of a executive function disorder in general. And I think there probably is a lot of overlap with anxiety and kind of that freeze, um, being kind of going between that flight and freeze mode. Okay, let me see. Let me scroll down. Rissa says ADHD meds changed my life. Sometimes medication is needed, but CBT is necessary as well. Yeah, I take medication for ADD as well. I'm a lot more focused when I'm on it. Um, I don't know. It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge to find kind of what works um, and then making those different like behavioral changes. For me, it wasn't just the medication. Meds did help, but it had to do a lot with time management and writing things down, like really not relying on my memory because it's crazy. It's just things don't stick in my brain. Um, And then realizing that I process things differently than a lot of other people. So I tend to either be hyper focused or not at all. And I tend to um, you know, be all in to a project or not at all. And it's the same thing where you're having to reread things over and over and over again, and comprehension can be really difficult. I had a awful time especially when I was younger, with being organized. I didn't know how. I didn't know how to organize information and or my space in general. And uh, that was, you know, it was really difficult. That's part of ADD, is the way the ADD brain works is, um, it's more compartmentalized. So where I forget the term, whereas a more like neurotypical brain, there's more crossover or like spillover. So you might learn a lesson in one area, and the lessons that you learned from that are you're able to transfer to other areas. But with ADD, it's not that. So you have to learn, you're kind of like continually having to learn every single lesson. Like there's no shortcuts. You have to learn the hard way every single time. And it gets exhausting. There's a lot to it. I just would encourage you um, to look up an ADD forum. There's a great one on Reddit if you're interested. It's called ADHD, and people kind of share their challenges, and it's, you know, can help get some clarity. Gareth asks, am I ADD? Yes. Yes, I am. My brother is, I think both. Yeah, I think both my parents are, and my brother for sure is. It's I don't know, it's sad. Thank you, Lucy says, for the live stream donation. She says, thank you for these live chats. I am so grateful. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that they're helpful. I think, but back to the ADD thing real quick. Um, one of the challenges is because there can be so much overlap between unprocessed trauma and ADD. A lot of the symptoms can look the same. So it can be that level of uh, that inability to focus, the reactivity, the impulsivity, the high levels of energy, especially in children. And so, that's kind of, um, I think that's being more and more looked at now. Is it's not just a child potentially being hyperactive or um, impulsive or difficult, and it might not be ADD. It might be that there's some unprocessed trauma going on. Um, as far as how that plays out with adults, I guess it wouldn't surprise me, because this stuff's not really taught, right? With how to process emotions and what's needed. Um, so I don't know. Everybody's brain is a little different, and you just kind of need. Right now, there really isn't a streamlined way of figuring out how kind of what works for certain people. Unfortunately, I wish there was more of a streamlined way. Like, like there's learning styles, right? Like there's different ways that we can kind of see, okay, well, these types of people, with the people with learning styles like this, tend to learn this way. So let's kind of modify things that way for them. And with 80, even mental health professionals, it's so frustrating. Um, I guess there's even though on paper mental health professionals know what ADD is, I swear they don't understand it. And I'm speaking both as a mental health professional and somebody that has ADD. There's been so many times where I just wanted to cry, because it's like, if you understood this, you wouldn't be saying the certain things that you're saying, or you like it just none of this would be happening right now. Um, Yeah, it's frustrating. So but the upside to having ADD is you're really forced to get to know yourself and to figure out what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And that can be challenging if you have the added challenge of, really being separated from yourself due to abuse or what have you. So it's a process of getting honest with yourself about what's working and what's not working. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing the stuff that can continually learn about ourselves that make an ocean of difference. Sometimes it's just little changes in behavior. Like for me, timers. That's a big thing that really helps keep me focused. Um, I'm trying to think other like I have this clock, this timer clock thing. It's I don't know if you can see this. Oh, I don't know how I can do this without. Anyways, it's a clock with one, two, three, what is it? 6, 2, 4, 6. Yeah, 6 sides and hexagon. And so y- a- at the top, it has like a 0 button, and then it goes 5, 10, or 5, 15, 30, 45, 60. And you just turn it one way. So like I'll just turn it that way, and then instantly starts the timer. And then you turn it right side up and it turns the timer off. And so it's just boom, 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 instant timers. I do that all day long when I'm working on projects because it helps keep me focused. Um, just really realizing that you process information differently from most people, and then being able to communicate that to other people, knowing what you need is huge. So I think that was one of the reasons I also struggled in therapy for as long as I did, is I don't do well with things that are um that aren't really mapped out. Like I need structure, and I need kind of like bottom line me. Like I'm that kind of person, just bottom line me. Give me like top 7 things I need to know about XYZ. Um got to keep it simple, chunk it down. Uh, um, um, that's how I do best. Meetings that go on for, hours on end, a lot of, uh, you know, um, just small talk or talking about too many different things all at once it's very confusing, and it just makes me frustrated and angry. Like, it's terrible. So changing my life says, oh my God, I need that clock. Where do I find it? This clock is I found it on Amazon, and I want to say it was like 20 bucks. Maybe try doing a search for like ADD clock or something. Yeah, it really helps. There's so many things. You know, um, I'm the kind of person, I- it's just, and everybody's different, right? Like everybody's brain works differently, but I need to understand, I need to have things spelled out for me. And I don't think I think other people just tend to get that in a more um, seamless, natural way. But there's a lot of things. I remember reading a book. I was married. I don't know how old I was, 27, 28. And I was having all this anxiety because I just felt like I couldn't get it together. I just couldn't get my life together. I was messy, it was disorganized, and I was so embarrassed because I married a guy in the military, and he just was, very on top of everything, and detail oriented and organized. And um, I just was a mess, an absolute mess compared to him. And I didn't want to be, but I didn't know how to be anything other than that. And I ended up reading this book. Um, it was I think it was the first book I'd ever read at that time on getting organized. And it was like a light switch came on for me, and I got it. And I remember running through the house, especially going over to my office and just pulling everything out, and it was like, I get it, I get it. And I was so excited about how I needed to organize my space. And then I went to the closet and did the same thing there. And then it just made sense. But um, that's the challenge with, yeah, kind of type of ADD brain. Jennifer asks, Dana, with your ADD, have you noticed circular thought patterns? Yes, yes, I have. And I'm trying to think what helped with that. It's hard. I take medication for depression and for ADD, but I really do feel like my depression is more chemical than anything else. 'Cause it's not like I feel sad. It's not like I have like this internal dialogue um, that's negative. I don't. But I can just really easily fall into like these deep holes, and it's awful. Um, I don't know which medication, but it's one of them. It's one of them helped tremendously shut that off. So, let's see here. Risa says, I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was 38. Yeah, and that's hard. I forget how old I was when I was diagnosed. I was in my 30s as well. My brother was diagnosed young, but he was more of the stereotypical ADHD type kid, super hyperactive, impulsive, uh, you know, high energy, oh my god, messy kid, just reactive, couldn't sit still. It was one of the between, there was no real in between there. He either couldn't sit still or you couldn't tear him away from what he was doing. He was either completely focused or not at all. um and so I wasn't like that. I was always a pretty mellow kid, except my brain was hyperactive. So like you were saying, Jennifer, it was all of these circular repeating thoughts, and it wasn't so much anxiety. It's just my brain is just always going, 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 going. I'm not a hyperactive person at all. And I wasn't when I was a kid. I was just really messy, and I had trouble. Um, you know, I guess I just had trouble kind of processing information in general. But I've really noticed that, the more complicated your life gets, like the older you get, the more complicated your life gets, the more, um, these kinds of problems, you start to see them more. So I didn't, I was doing fine in elementary school. Things became a lot more challenging in middle school, then high school, and with adult expectations. And I just really, really, really struggled. Gareth asks, Dana, do you keep fit? Do you think it helps with your general overall well-being if you do? Um, I do not keep fit, and that is something I would like that I not only would like to, I need to. I really need to get better with that. I always feel significantly better after exercise of any kind. And yeah, I do notice a huge uh, lift from doing that. I used to be really into aerial yoga and used to go on a regular basis. Um, yeah, I love that. I would like to get back into that. It's so great for just everything, flexibility and everything. Oh, thank you, Salon, for the live stream donation. It says, "Thank you for all you do for us, Dana." Oh, you're so welcome. You are so welcome. Oh, good. Changing my life says that she found the clock. Yes, it is, uh, I love it. It's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. You wouldn't think that like, it took me a few days to really pony up the 20 bucks or whatever it was to buy this, because I thought, "Well, I've got an alarm on my phone, right? I can just set the alarm on my phone or the timer on my phone for 20 minutes or whatever." And I could, except this is people with ADD, we tend to need visual reminders. So knowing that there's a timer on your phone and seeing a timer is two very different things. And this is some of the best money I've ever spent on this little clock thing. So, and the fact that it's so easy, you just turn it to one side and it goes is is awesome. So, let's see. Oh, I don't think so, Gareth. He says, "Oh, I talk about anything and everything. I think you would scream around me, Dana." Oh, I don't know. I ramble on too. There's so many things that I'm interested in. Uh, so yeah, I probably would. And there's so many things that you're interested in. We share so many of the same interests. Is what I'm trying to say. That no, I think I would really enjoy your company. My problem is I have a hard time kind of being patient if it's just stuff that I'm really not interested in. I know it sounds awful, but um, yeah, but people that like to discuss ideas and concepts and um, just the things that I'm not really that familiar with, like that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. Jennifer was saying, I think she's referring to the list saying, "Yes, that's what I wish I had in therapy. It's frustrating to not get that. I just don't know if I'm supposed to expect that or not." Every single therapist is different, and it's a lot uh, everybody has their own approach, unfortunately, and sometimes it works, you know, and sometimes it doesn't. And it is hard because if you're a client in therapy, especially if you don't really know what to expect, then you don't really know if it's there's not a real accurate basis on which to determine, like, is this working for me? Like, could it be working better? Should it be working better? I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. So it helps to get clear on kind of what your goals for therapy are. Most therapists will do this with you, kind of set some treatment goals and then periodically check in, because everything that you're doing in therapy, and again, this depends on the kind of therapy they're doing, but everything that they're doing in therapy relates to those treatment goals. And then those goals are kind of being monitored to see if you're making progress. And if there's not progress that's being made, then some sort of adjustment needs to happen. Either a different goal needs to be set or some different approaches need to be considered. So, and again, it's just a lot of it's personality and approach. Um, yeah. So I need to email you anyhow, Jennifer. I'll email you tomorrow and we can talk more about that if you're interested. Jennifer says, if I go to another therapist, is it okay to ask for structure? Yes, absolutely. And not only ask for it, but when you're looking for different therapists, to let them know, hey, you know what? I've been in therapy before. This is what's worked for me, and this is what hasn't worked for me. And this is what I'm looking for in a therapist. I'm looking for this kind of approach that here's what I need, or here's what I really benefit from. And in doing that too, it helps. I know it can feel weird, like, oh, well, who am I? It's like the student teaching the teacher, right? But it's not. It's helping them out. And most therapists are going to really appreciate that. And because then they'll know right away, okay, are we going to be a good fit? Is this person, because a good therapist wants you to get the results that you want in from counseling. They don't want you just to be there every week indefinitely. There's a purpose for that time there. So, um, you know, letting them know kind of what you're looking for in a therapeutic approach is really helpful. And then they can also tailor their approach. So if they're like, oh, great, okay, this is what works for you, that you're really into homework, or you're really into exploring, doing role plays, working on boundaries or whatever, then they can work on incorporating that into your sessions. And if that's not something that they're interested in, and that's something that you really think that you need to practice, then I'd find somebody else, you know? Um, let's see here. Oh, well, thank you. Rissa says, I have to go now, but I want you to know that I appreciate you very much. Thank you. I will be tuning in again. Well, we'll be glad to have you back. I'm glad that this time was helpful. Bonnie asks, why are narcissists so unappreciative of what you do for them? They want you to give and give, but they won't even acknowledge what you do for them. Well, I think, Bonnie, what you're seeing, it's just that attitude of entitlement. It's sort of like with the little kid, right? Where uh, as an adult or as a parent, you know what you've done and the sacrifices you've made and the time you've spent and the effort that goes in to whatever it is that you've done for them. But for the kid, it's just this level of entitlement. Well, yeah, you should, uh, they expect, I don't know, they expect to go on vacation. They expect to, they don't look at it as anything extra is being done for them because they're just used to it. It's just, and I think narcissists, it's very much the same way. So when you treat them, when you do so much for them, they just expect that. So they don't see it as any great effort on your end. Even if it is above and beyond, even if you got them a really thoughtful gift, or um I don't know, made the effort to cook their favorite meal, or do something like that. They they just expect it, so they don't see it as that extra effort. Right. Bonnie says, yeah, they have arrested development. Let's see. Yeah, Huffle Mom was saying ADHD is hard. Having ADHD and depression is harder. ADHD makes starting anything hard, and depression saps what little will I have left. Yeah. And Jennifer, that might be part of it too. She's talking to Huffle Mom. She says, I was reminded by Dana because she said that she never got structure in therapy. And that's why it clicked for me that maybe I might need structure. It makes sense, but I never felt like I got that. And Jennifer, I didn't really ever make that connection either, that maybe that's more of an ADD type thing until tonight. And I wonder how many people in general would benefit from that, or if it is more of an ADD thing. Because like I was saying earlier, I almost about cried when I heard this about how our brains compartmentalize things. So there isn't this transfer effect, is what it's called. There isn't this transfer effect where you learn one lesson or one skill in one way, and you're able to transfer that knowledge into other areas of your life. We don't have that. So it's it's everything takes the long way, and it can feel really defeating because other people just seem to kind of be able to um navigate adult life, and then there's those of us that are like, man, I'm 42, and it's sort of like I feel like I'm just getting some of the basics down about how to actually take care of myself as an adult, and it's can be very discouraging. But I think that's one of the reasons I remember thinking for years, I've been in and out of therapy for years and years and years, and I just really don't feel like I got that much out of it. But I think it's the way, and maybe I did. There's a very solid chance that I did. I just don't remember it because the way that I process information, I have to write down everything, including aha moments. Um, because for me, when I think probably for most people, that moment between like aha moment and assimilation to where you start using that information is very, very quick. So I'll have an aha moment, be like, oh my God, it's game changing. Then before I know it, it's like, oh, it's just common knowledge. So I don't even remember that I've had this aha moment. And then that feels discouraging too, because you can't see progress. And it helps to write things down, and it helps to keep things structured so you can go back and realize how far you've come and realize, okay, this is what I've learned so far. Yeah, Jennifer says, I'm about to be 35 and it's been a struggle to figure out adult life. I do have my own apartment and job, and I have for a long time. I pay my bills, etc. But for some reason, I can't move forward from this and have goals to meet. Yeah. And it could very well be. If you get a chance, Jennifer, seriously, head over to Reddit. I don't know if you're on Reddit at all, but check out the ADHD forum or subreddit there. It's I think it's helpful to join groups like this because it's a it's the daily experiences of real people. It's not like the clinical understanding of things. And hearing the experiences of like the challenges of real people, um, you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was a part of ADD, or I didn't realize that other people even struggled with this. It you understand it just paints a bigger picture of the challenges that people tend to struggle with. And I think when you're on those kind of forums, either what people are describing resonates or it doesn't. And that can be helpful too. Let's see. Oh, which book? Changing My Life. Which book did you recommend? Yeah. Oh, I get it. Huffle Mom. She says, yeah, the frustrating part of this is ADD and persistent depressive disorder in tandem is that certain people think I'm making excuses not to work. I'm not. It's just really hard. Yeah. It is. It's it's awful. I mean, I know for me when I go through a depressive episode on top of having ADD, with ADD, my mind's always going. If if I'm awake, my mind is just always thinking about things, and um, there's a lot of activity. I was cleaning out my computer desktop trying to organize it well, I've been working on it for a couple of weeks now, and it almost made me want to cry because there's hundreds, hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of files in there of all of these different ideas and half-started projects, and it just made me want to cry because it's just this flurry of, half-started projects, and it's frustrating. But then with depression on top of that, yeah, it's like you just can't move. It's hard to get out of bed, and yeah, it's just difficult to describe to anybody that hasn't struggled with that. Hmm. Let's see here. I'm so curious to know what book changing my life recommended. Oh, Splitting. It's a book called Splitting. Oh, okay. So it's a book called Splitting by Bill Eddy. It's about divorcing a narcissist. Okay, interesting. Um, Helpful Mom says, "Hey Dana, do you sometimes have nights where your brain won't shut up long enough for you to fall asleep? I can count how often I've been forced to pull an all-nighter." Rarely. I rarely struggle with insomnia of any kind. My issue is the opposite. I tend to sleep too much, and I fall asleep like a little kid. It's fast and I'm out, and it's embarrassing. So if I feel sleep kind of descending upon me, like I said, my brain's either on or off. If I feel sleep descending upon me, it's a matter of seconds before I'm going to be out cold. And I've fallen asleep on the phone before by accident, where I just thought I was kind of relaxing. Nope, totally out cold. I'll have to tell people, I can fall asleep so fast. I could be on the couch and have to walk upstairs to go to bed and not be able to walk upstairs because it's just my brain just shuts down. So, um, but my problem is when I'm awake, my brain is going, 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 that it is really difficult for me to focus on anything else other than what my brain wants to focus on. Yes. And JJ says, as adults, we are responsible for creating our own structure. No one else is. Yes. I think a lot of it's realizing that we can do that. And so, I mean, there's so many of these concepts that tie into one another. So realizing when we know what we need, like, okay, like whatever it might be that a person needs, that they need, like Jennifer was saying, that she's thinking maybe she needs more structure in therapy, or um, a person struggling with getting organized, and um, that they need to figure out a routine or a structure with how to get organized or whatever it might be. It's knowing yourself well enough to realize, okay, you know what, these are some of my strengths, these are some of my weaknesses, um, and these are some areas that I'm challenged with, and then figuring out how, like, what we need in order to make our life work. And and again, this is another skill set that's just, it's really not taught. It tends to be those people that kind of pick up the stuff intuitively. I remember I had a friend in middle school and high school, and her room was always clean. I mean, she had this whole morning routine and evening routine. She was very structured. She was very organized. And I was always so jealous of that. My brain, I didn't get it. I didn't know how to be that way. But you know, she just got it. And some people get it and some people don't. And for those of us that don't, we have to learn these skills. But thankfully it can be learned. But it's knowing kind of what you need to in terms of structure of what kind of environment is conducive for you. Um, as far as across the board, as far as a work environment. Um, so for example, I learned early on as a nurse that, when you're doing your clinical rotations, I left in tears almost every single day when we were working in hospitals because you have so many patients, you have to remember things, and there's so much stuff going on, and my brain doesn't work that way. I do not work well in environments like that. And I was so terrified of hurting somebody because I would, if I forgot something or uh, basically if I forgot something, it was such a nerve wracking way. It was just awful. It was absolutely awful. And so I knew right away, okay, the kind of environment that I need is going to be um, working with patients more on like a one-on-one type situation, not where I'm getting pulled in a million different directions. And that's why I ended up going into hospice nursing. And that's why I ended up going into psychiatric nursing is in the environments that I was working in, because that's what I needed. Anything else would not have worked. Um, so kind of knowing these things, okay, well, um, yeah, knowing these things about yourself, what kind of environments are conducive for you, and um, just and like knowing what you have control over and what you don't have control over. And then thinking about, okay, well, these are some things that I could do to make this environment work better for me. So yeah, Helpful Mom says, I tried to prioritize my life and set myself a routine. I was very specific. I even told my family. I suppose I need more practice saying no because I keep being interrupted. Yeah. It's, it's whatever works for you. And like JJ was saying, realizing that it's up to us to have that structure in our life, and it's up to us to value our time and to guard our time. That's part of valuing it, is to be able to say, if a I don't know, um you've got something that you want to do, and a friend wants to go hang out or whatever, to realize, okay, if I want to get certain things done, like I have to guard my time. I can't let other people kind of pull me into their crises or um their issues. I had a neighbor for a couple years, high drama, always something. And I think she was lonely on top of it. But she would like literally try to pull me into her apartment to talk to me, to talk at me. Like she didn't even, I mean, it wasn't a conversation. It wasn't enjoyable. She just, you know, I think, she just was drama and she was lonely. But I didn't, that's not how I wanted to spend my afternoons or any time really. Uh, and so realizing I had to find a way to not let that continue because I wasn't valuing my time. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. I never thought about that, Darlene. She says, you kind of sound like you could have narcolepsy or some kind of sleep disorder. I suggest talking to your doctor about an MSLT sleep study. That's interesting. I require a lot of sleep too. I guess I just always chalked it up to depression. And then when I'm awake, like I said, my mind is just going. But you're right. That is worth asking my doctor about. Laura says, trust me, I struggle with clutter too. It's very interesting. And changing my life, this is one of the many reasons I'd like to talk to you about this, is because there really is such a connection between what's going on with our internal environment and our external environment. And the cool thing is that if we make some changes with our external environment, and it can, especially positive changes with our external environment, it can also feed our internal environment. It's just such an interesting, it's kind of like a brain hack thing to be able to do. And we can really see what's going on with us inside by looking at our environment on the outside. So let's see here. Let me scroll up. Huffle Mom is saying, I'm trying to prioritize self-care, but it often seems like everyone else, not just Jack, needs me so much that I just don't have time for myself. Just reminding myself to love myself helps, but it's often not enough. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with just really guarding our time. It really is. And you'd be surprised too, because when we prioritize self-care and we're feeling balanced, right? When we're feeling nourished and balanced, we have that much more energy and nourishment to give other people. It's such a win-win. It really is. But man, when we're kind of coasting on fumes, we just don't have, there's just not anything in the tank, to give to anybody. And it really is worth taking some time to figure out kind of what you're needing and what needs some adjustment. Yeah, Changing My Life says, yeah, I'd love this conversation. I will email you. I'm going to open up my email tab right now. So let me just search my email really quick. Changing. Let's see. I have too many email accounts. It's a mess. There you are. Okay. Let me star the email. Okay. I have starred the email and I will get one back to you when this live stream ends. It'll just be a brief one, but it'll be something. Gareth says that he has about 15 email accounts. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't have that many, but I have quite a few, and it's a hot mess. Yeah, I need a good organizer. Virtual assistant, somebody. I don't know, something. So, okay, well, let's see. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation, changing my life. I think it'll be really cool. I think it's needed. And I guess like everything else, right? It's easy to chalk up disorganization or a cluttered space or an unsatisfying space to, oh, I'm just busy, or oh, it's just this, or oh, it's that. But I really think that it goes a lot deeper than that. And the relief and the peace, the benefit it can bring to a person's life to have their space be nourishing is huge, huge. Really. I wonder how that would work though. Gareth says you can get a personal assistant on Fiverr for a $5. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm always nervous. I've tried hiring a few people over the years, and only a few have really worked out. I need to do something though. So let's see, let me scroll up here. Let's see. Gosh, this chat. It's so entertaining. It's all over the place. I love all of the ground that people cover. So interesting. Um, that's interesting. Gareth says, if you yawn when someone else yawns, you have empathy. Yawning and empathy are linked to the same part of the brain. I'm going to have to look into that. I would imagine it's somehow related to like mirror neurons. I'm going to copy and paste that and look into that. That's fascinating if that is the case. And then it kind of makes you wonder if it works the other way around, if empathy can be cultivated, you know, if our psychology can affect our physiology, if our physiology can affect our psychology, if empathy can be improved. in some way. I don't know. These are the things that these are the rabbit holes that I fall down in random places. I don't get what I need to get done, but I'll learn all about, if yawning is connected to empathy. Ridiculous. Right? Jennifer says, this chat is an example of my brain sometimes. I hear ya. I hear ya. So, okay. So, with that all being said, let's take some time and to just be fully present in our body and to do our kind of meditation exercise. So take some time to find a comfortable spot, whether you're seated or laying down. And allowing yourself to simply be here and breathe. And feeling the heaviness of your body as you allow yourself to easily and effortlessly breathe in and breathe out. Relaxing the muscles in your face, around your eyes, your forehead, your cheeks, your mouth and your jaw. Relaxing your neck and shoulders and allowing them to become heavy as they drop down. Relaxing your chest, feeling it rise and fall with every inhale and every exhale. Relaxing your arms and your hands and your fingers. Relaxing your stomach, your hips, and your thighs. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. Relaxing your knees, your calves, your feet and your toes. Feeling the weight of your body as your muscles relax. And taking some time now to turn inward, acknowledging to yourself how far you've come and that you're doing a great job and that you have value and that you are likable and you are lovable that there are so many things that are right about you. Allowing that to sink in at an emotional level, that you have value, that you matter. There are lots of things about you that are likable. There are lots of things about you that are lovable. And that it's okay to love yourself. It's okay to give yourself grace and compassion for the mistakes you've made. Realize it's all part of being human. And that all any of us can do is the best we can with the information we have at the time. That you have value. There is so much that is right with you. There are so many things about you that are likable and lovable. That you can work towards reparenting yourself and protecting yourself, nourishing yourself, nurturing yourself. That you are worthy of all of these things. You have value. You matter. You are valuable. It's reasonable and appropriate and healthy for you to want to value your time and your energy and your emotions and your environment and your body, your physical health and your emotional health. These things matter, and they're worth it because you're worth it. You matter just as much as anyone else. You absolutely, completely do. There is so much that is right about you. There really, really is. When you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes and come on back. So, thank you guys for being here. And, excuse me. Oh, goodness. Thank you guys for being here. And I hope to see you next week. I have a lot of random things to go look up and do now. So if anybody else is interested in learning more about the yawn and empathy thing, please let me know. I would be curious. I know Darlene says I've been yawning just reading the chat. I know, me too. It's awful. So, oh, well, thank you, Camilla. She says, you matter as well, Dana, and you are loved. Well, thank you. So you guys take care. Oh my gosh, people keep talking about yawning, and I think we're all creating this big cycle of yawning. Okay. Okay. So Thank you guys so much for being here, and just lots of love. I'm not going to read the chat because I'm going to keep going. Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal. So take care, and I will see you next week. Okay. Good night.